I sat at the corner table of the Riverside Bistro, watching sunlight dance across the water while my parents ordered their third round of mimosas. It was Sunday morning in Portland, and the brunch crowd hummed with weekend energy. My brother Jeffrey had chosen this place naturally. He always picked venues where he could be seen, where his expensive watch caught the light just right. "Barbara, you look tired," my mother said, her voice dripping with concern that fooled no one at our table. "Still working those long hours at the hospital." I was a pediatric nurse at Providence Medical Center. And yes, I worked long hours, night shifts, double shifts, weekends. Children did not schedule their emergencies around anyone's convenience. But my mother made it sound like a character flaw rather than a career. "The schedule has been intense," I admitted, taking a sip of my coffee. "We had a difficult case this week, a 7-year-old with acute appendicitis who came in at midnight." "How noble," Jeffrey said, not looking up from his phone. At 32, my brother had perfected the art of dismissive multitasking. Meanwhile, I just closed the Henderson account, $3.2 million in revenue for the firm. My father beamed. "That's my boy. Partners before 40, I guarantee it." Jeffrey worked at a commercial real estate firm downtown. He wore suits that cost more than my monthly rent and drove a car that could have paid off my nursing school loans twice over. Our parents had helped him with his MBA, his first apartment, his investment portfolio. They called it supporting ambition. When I had asked for help with my nursing certification fees 6 years ago, they had suggested I learn to budget better. $3.2 million, my mother repeated, reaching over to squeeze Jeffrey's hand. "Your father and I are so proud." "Barbara, did you hear that?" "I heard," I said evenly. "Congratulations, Jeffrey." "Thanks," he said, finally glancing up. His smile was sharp. "How much do nurses make these days?" 50,000, 60. "Jeffrey," my father said, but he was smiling too. "Don't tease your sister." "I am not teasing. I genuinely don't know. It just seems like a lot of work," for he trailed off, shrugging. For what I earned, he meant for what I was worth. The waiter brought our food, and I focused on my omelet while my family discussed Jeffrey's latest triumph. Apparently, the Henderson account was just the beginning. He had 3 more prospects lined up, each one more lucrative than the last. My parents hung on every word. "Oh, before I forget," my mother said, pulling out her phone. "Your father and I have been talking, and we have decided on Hawaii for this December 2nd weeks on Maui. Jeffrey and his girlfriend will join us." "Jennifer," Jeffrey supplied. "She's excited." "Never been to Hawaii." "Neither have I said quietly. My mother waved her hand. "Well, you're welcome to come if you can get the time off, though I know how difficult that is with your schedule. Plus, the resort is quite expensive. $2,500 per person, not including airfare." I did the mental math automatically. For 4 people, assuming Jennifer was covered separately, that was $10,000 minimum, plus flights would add another $2,000 at least, $12,000 total. Probably more. "That sounds lovely," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I loved my parents. I wanted them to enjoy their retirement. "You two deserve a nice vacation." "We thought so too," my father said. "After all, we worked hard our entire lives. Time to enjoy the fruits of our labor." Jeffrey looked at me then, really looked at me, and something cruel flickered in his eyes. "Must be nice, right, Barbara? Taking expensive trips, living comfortably. Of course, some of us had to work for it." "I work," I said, keeping my voice level. 48 hours this week alone." "Sure, but let's be honest about the difference between working hard and working smart. I mean, nursing is fine if you want to be comfortable with mediocrity, but real success requires ambition." My mother nodded thoughtfully. "Jeffrey has a point, sweetheart. You were always content with just getting by. Even in school, you did the minimum to pass rather than pushing yourself to excel." That was not true. I'd graduated with honors from nursing school while working 2 part-time jobs, but they had already forgotten that. Or maybe they had never noticed in the first place. "I save lives," I said softly. "Children's lives." "Of course you do," my father said, his tone placating. "And we appreciate that. Society needs nurses. We just wish you had aimed a little higher, that's all. You were always such a bright girl." We're past tense. The conversation moved on. My parents discussed resort amenities while Jeffrey showed them photos of his office view. I finished my omelet and wondered why I kept coming to these brunches. Kept subjecting myself to these small cruelties disguised as family concern because they were my parents, because Jeffrey was my brother, because family was supposed to matter, even when it hurt. "So, Hawaii in December," my mother said again, practically glowing. "We leave on the 15th. 2 weeks of paradise. No work, no stress, just beaches and relaxation. Sounds perfect, I said, and meant it. If only I had known what was coming. The following Sunday, we met at the same bistro. This time, my parents arrived carrying shopping bags from expensive stores downtown. My mother showed off a new designer handbag, while my father displayed his latest golf club purchase. Got to look good in Hawaii, my mother explained, pulling tissue paper from her bag to reveal a silk resort ensemble. And your father simply had to have this driver. The resort has a championship golf course, I calculated quickly. The handbag was easily $1,500, the golf club at least $1,000. Plus the clothes my mother was still showing off, another few hundred minimum. Those are beautiful, I said honestly. My mother had excellent taste. Always had. The color suits you. Thank you, darling. I thought so too. She glanced at my outfit, my simple cotton dress from Target, and I saw the familiar flicker of disappointment. You know, you could stand to invest in your appearance a bit more. First impressions matter, especially at your age. I was 28, not 50, but I let it slide. Jeffrey arrived late as usual with Jennifer in tow. She was pretty in an obvious way with perfect makeup and perfectly styled hair. She worked in marketing, I recalled, at some trendy agency downtown. Sorry we are late, Jeffrey said, not sounding sorry at all. We were at the Porsche dealership. Jennifer has been wanting to test drive the new Cayenne. It is gorgeous, Jennifer gushed. Jeffrey says if my promotion comes through, we should seriously consider it. My mother clasped her hands together. How wonderful. Barbara, wouldn't it be nice to have a car like that? I have a car, I said. It runs fine. That old Honda? Jeffrey snorted. Thing must have 200,000 miles on it by now? 183,000, I corrected. And yes, it runs perfectly. I take good care of it. That is the difference between us, Jeffrey said, leaning back in his chair. I invest in quality. You settle for functional. It is a mindset thing. The waiter took our orders. I chose the cheapest entree on the menu, a habit from years of carefully managed finances. My family ordered appetizers, expensive entree, a bottle of wine. They would split the bill evenly at the end, as they always did, meaning I would subsidize their indulgence. But pointing that out would make me petty, ungrateful. Small prices to pay for family, right? So, Barbara, my father said once the wine arrived, your mother and I have been discussing something, and we wanted to run it by you. I waited, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Jennifer suddenly became very interested in her phone. Jeffrey smirked into his wine glass. The Hawaii trip, my mother began. As we mentioned, it is quite expensive, and your father and I are retired, living on a fixed income. This was technically true, though their fixed income included his substantial pension, her investments, and the rental property they owned in Vancouver. They were hardly struggling. We were wondering, my father continued, if you might want to contribute to the trip as a gift to your parents. I blinked. Contribute how much? Well, the whole thing comes to about $12,000. My mother said, we thought if you could cover it as a thank you for everything we have done for you over the years, it would be a lovely gesture. $12,000? That was 4 months of my rent. That was nearly a quarter of my annual take-home pay after taxes. That was the down payment I had been saving for 3 years, hoping to eventually buy a small condo. That is a lot of money, I said slowly. We raised you for 18 years, my father said, his tone hardening slightly. Fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head? Surely you can manage this one thing. Jeffrey is contributing, my mother added. He is paying for Jennifer's portion. See how he takes care of family. Of course he was. Jeffrey made 6 times what I made. $12,000 was pocket change to him. I need to think about it, I said. The table went silent. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. Jeffrey's smirk widened. Think about it, my mother repeated, her voice cold. We are asking for one gesture of gratitude, Barbara. One acknowledgement of everything we have sacrificed for you. I work 48-hour weeks, I said, feeling heat rise in my chest. I save children's lives. I think I have made something of myself. You are a nurse, Jeffrey said flatly. You are service-level staff. Let's not pretend you are performing miracles here. That is enough, my father said. But he was looking at me, not Jeffrey. Your brother is simply pointing out that there are levels to success. And frankly, Barbara, you have always been content at the lower levels. The words landed like physical blows. Lower levels, as if measuring blood pressure and administering medications and holding a terrified child's hand during a procedure meant nothing. as if the night I had helped resuscitate a 3-year-old and brought him back from the edge of death was somehow less valuable than Jeffrey's real estate deals. "I will think about it," I repeated, my voice barely steady. "Fine," my mother said, snapping her napkin onto the table. "Think about it. But we need an answer by Friday. The final payment is due, and we need to know if you are going to step up or if we will need to scale back our plans." The meal continued in tense silence. When the check came, they split it evenly as always. My $12 salad cost me $48 after subsidizing their wine and appetizers and expensive entree. I drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, their words echoing in my head. Lower levels, service staff, content with mediocrity. I'd spent the last 6 years dedicated to healing children, to providing comfort during their most frightening moments, to being the steady hand that parents trusted with their most precious treasures. And to my family, I was useless. That night, I sat in my small apartment and stared at my bank account. 3 years of careful saving had brought my down payment fund to $13,000. Every extra shift, every skipped vacation, every dinner cooked at home instead of ordered out had contributed to this amount. If I gave them $12,000, I would be back to square one, renting forever, never building equity, never having the security of ownership. And for what? To fund my parents' luxury vacation while they called mediocre. But they were my parents. They had raised me as they kept reminding me. Didn't I owe them something? I thought about calling my friend Teresa, who worked at the hospital with me. She had met my family exactly once at a barbecue 2 years ago and had asked afterward why I let them treat me like that. I had not had a good answer then. I still did not have one now. Instead, I opened my laptop and looked at the resort where they were staying. It was beautiful. 5-star luxury with infinity pools and private beach access and restaurants that charged $40 for breakfast. The kind of place I would never be able to afford for myself, not on my salary. But I could afford it for them technically if I destroyed my savings. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Have you thought about our conversation? Your father and I are waiting to finalize the booking." It was 10 p.m. I had worked a 12-hour shift. I was exhausted down to my bones, and she was pressing me for money before I had even had time to process the request. I set the phone down without responding. Tuesday brought another text. "Barbara, we need your answer. This is getting ridiculous." Wednesday, my father called. "Your mother is very hurt by your silence. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us with coldness." Thursday, Jeffrey sent a message. "Just pay for the trip, Barbara. Stop being selfish. They are our parents." Easy for him to say. His girlfriend's portion was probably $8,000 at most, and he made 15 times that in a month. Friday morning, I woke up to find 7 missed calls and a string of texts. The final one from my mother read, "If we don't hear from you by noon, we will know where we stand. We will remember this, Barbara." I arrived at work feeling hollowed out. The pediatric ward was busy as always. A 6-year-old named Trevor had been admitted overnight with pneumonia. His mother sat by his bedside, red-eyed and terrified, holding his small hand. "Is he going to be okay?" She asked me as I checked his vitals. "He is responding well to the antibiotics," I assured her. "His oxygen levels are improving. We will keep him for observation, but I think he will pull through just fine." She started crying. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You have been so kind to us." I thought about my parents' words. Service level staff, lower levels. As if this moment, this mother's relief, this child's recovery meant nothing. During my lunch break, I sat in the hospital cafeteria and made a decision. I would pay for the trip, not because they deserved it, but because I could not handle the guilt otherwise. They were my parents. This was what family did. I transferred $12,000 from my savings to my checking account, then set up a payment to my mother's account. But before I could complete the transfer, my phone rang. "Barbara." My mother's voice was bright, excited. "We are here at the bistro. Jeffrey suggested we all have lunch together. Can you come? We have such good news to share." "I am at work," I said. "I am on my lunch break." "Oh, this won't take long. We are just around the corner from the hospital. Please, it would mean so much to your father and me." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I agreed. 20 minutes later, I walked into the same bistro where this had all started. My family sat at the same corner table, champagne glasses already filled. Jeffrey had his arm around Jennifer, who wore a massive diamond on her left hand. "We are engaged." My mother squealed as I approached. "Jeffrey proposed last night. Isn't it wonderful?" I looked at my brother at his smug smile and forced myself to echo her enthusiasm. Congratulations! That is wonderful news. The wedding will be next fall, Jeffrey said. We are thinking a destination ceremony. Maybe Italy or the French Riviera. How exciting, I said, feeling numb. My mother grabbed my hand. Now about the Hawaii trip. Have you made your decision? All eyes turned to me. Jennifer looked curious. Jeffrey looked amused. My parents looked expectant. And suddenly I heard it. Really heard it. Barbara, sweetheart, my father said, leaning forward, we know money is tight for you. But surely you understand how important this is to us. We've given you so much. Don't you think it is time to give back? I have been thinking about that, I said slowly, about how much you have given me. Good, my mother said, smiling. So you will transfer the money today. Actually, I said, I had a question first about all that you have given me. Jeffrey snorted. Here we go. You paid for Jeffrey's MBA? I said, keeping my voice calm. That was what, $80,000? My father waved his hand. An investment in his future. You gave him $20,000 for a down payment on his first condo. He needed help getting started. My mother said, you co-signed his car lease. You paid for his professional wardrobe. You gave him seed money for investments. I looked at them steadily. How much total would you say you have given Jeffrey over the years? That is different, my father said, his voice cooling. Jeffrey has always been driven, always had ambition. We were supporting his potential. And what did you give me? Silence. For nursing school, I continued. I asked for $5,000 to help with certification fees. You said no. You told me to budget better, to work more hours, to figure it out. You did figure it out. My mother said, see, it built character. So Jeffrey's potential deserves 6 figures of support, but my character needed to be built through struggle. Barbara, Jeffrey said, his voice hard, don't do this. Don't make this ugly. But I was already reaching for my phone, opening my banking app, finding the $12,000 transfer I had set up, but not yet completed. My finger hovered over the cancel button. What are you doing? My mother asked, leaning forward to see my phone screen. Just checking something, I said, staring at the pending transfer. $12,000, my entire savings. 3 years of sacrifice reduced to a number on a screen. Well, hurry up, Jeffrey said. Some of us have actual jobs to get back to. The waiter appeared with another round of champagne. My father raised his glass. To family, he said, and to Barbara finally stepping up. They all drank. I set my phone face down on the table. Actually, I said, I wanted to ask you all something. When you think about me, about my life, what do you see? My mother frowned. What kind of question is that? A genuine one? What do you see when you look at me? Jeffrey rolled his eyes. We see a nurse. We see someone who works hard, but never quite figured out how to translate that into real success. Why? Because I want to understand something. I said, I want to understand how I went from being your daughter to being your disappointment. You are not a disappointment, my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. You are just different from Jeffrey. Different how? Jeffrey has drive. My mother explained as if talking to a child. He saw opportunities and seized them. He worked. He strategized. He built something impressive. You chose a helping profession, which is admirable. But let's be realistic about the limitations. The limitations of saving children's lives. Don't be dramatic. Jeffrey said, you are a nurse, not a brain surgeon. There are thousands of nurses. You are replaceable. The word hung in the air between us. Replaceable. Is that what you all think? I asked quietly. That I am replaceable. We think you are settling? My father said. We think you could have been more if you had pushed yourself harder. Look at Jeffrey. He took risks. He made connections. He created value. What have you created? I thought about Trevor upstairs breathing easier because of my care. I thought about the premature twins I had monitored for 6 weeks until they were strong enough to go home. I thought about the teenager with leukemia who had told me I was the only person who did not treat her like she was dying. What had I created? I had created moments of comfort in terrible circumstances. I had created calm and chaos. I had created hope where there was fear. But to my family, those things had no value. They could not be measured in dollars or prestige or social status. You know what? I said, picking up my phone. You are right. I should give back. After all, you gave me so much. My mother brightened. See, I knew you would understand. 18 years of food and shelter and basic parenting, I continued. That is what you gave me. What the law required you to give me. What any parent gives their child. That is not fair, my mother said, her voice sharpening. We gave you love. We gave you a home. You gave Jeffrey $100,000 in direct financial support as an adult, I said. You gave me a lecture about budgeting when I asked for $5,000 because you needed to learn responsibility, my father said, his face weening. No, because you decided Jeffrey was worth investing in and I was not. You decided his dreams mattered and mine were just hobbies. You decided he was the success and I was the disappointment before either of us even had a chance to prove ourselves. Jeffrey slammed his glass down. This is pathetic. You are jealous. You have always been jealous that I accomplished more than you. Accomplished what? I asked. Making rich people richer? Selling buildings. At least I help people. You are a glorified waitress with medical training. He snapped. Don't act like you are Mother Teresa. The people at nearby tables were starting to stare. My mother noticed and lowered her voice to an angry whisper. Barbara, you are making a scene. Whatever point you are trying to make, you have made it. Now transfer the money and let's be done with this. Or what? I asked. Or what? My father repeated. Or we will know exactly who you are. We will know you are selfish. We will know you do not value family like you value me. We invited you to Hawaii. My mother hissed. We included you in our plans. You invited me to fund your vacation, I corrected. There is a difference. Jennifer spoke up for the first time. Maybe we should all take a breath here. Stay out of this, Jeffrey told her, then turned back to me. You know what your problem is, Barbara? You are bitter. You are resentful. You cannot stand that I succeeded where you failed, so you are lashing out. I did not fail, I said. I chose differently. There is a difference. Keep telling yourself that, he said. Meanwhile, the rest of us will be in Hawaii enjoying the vacation you were too petty to fund. My mother's face crumpled. How does it feel, Barbara? How does it feel being the useless child? The one who takes and never gives back. The one who cannot even do this one thing for the parents who raised her. The words were designed to wound, and they did. But beneath the hurt, something else rose up. Something sharp and clear and absolutely done with this. I looked at my phone again. The pending transfer glowed on the screen. You want to know how it feels? I asked, being the useless child. We are waiting, my father said coldly. It feels like freedom, I said and canceled the transfer. The change in the air was immediate. My mother gasped. Jeffrey froze mid-reach for his champagne. My father's face went from red to purple. What did you just do? My mother whispered. I canceled the transfer, I said calmly. You are not getting my money. You cannot be serious, Jeffrey said. You cannot be that petty? Watch me. I stood up, gathering my purse. You wanted to know what I created. I created boundaries starting now. Sit down, my father commanded. We are not finished discussing this. Yes, we are. I'm going back to work where apparently I am just a replaceable service worker. Funny how replaceable people still have to show up and do the job, though. Funny how the whole system would collapse without us. Barbara, my mother said, tears streaming down her face now. Please, you are being cruel. I'm being honest. There is a difference. The trip is in 2 weeks, she cried. What are we supposed to do? I don't know, I said. Maybe scale back your plans. Maybe stay at a cheaper resort. Maybe ask Jeffrey to contribute more since he is the valuable child. This is insane, Jeffrey said, standing now too. You are throwing away your family over $12,000. No, I said you threw me away the moment you decided I wasn't worth the same investment as you. I am just accepting reality. I walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard my mother sobbing, my father shouting, Jeffrey cursing. The other diners watched with undisguised interest. I did not care. In the parking lot, I sat in my old Honda with its $183,000 M, and I shook, not from fear or regret, but from the sheer relief of finally saying no. My phone started ringing immediately. My mother, then my father, then Jeffrey. I silenced it and drove back to the hospital. Trevor was awake when I returned to the ward. His color better, his breathing easier. His mother smiled when she saw me. Thank you for everything, she said. The doctor says he can go home tomorrow. That is wonderful news, I said and meant it. This was my value, this moment, this child's recovery, this mother's relief. My phone buzzed again. Another call from my family. I declined it and got back to work. The weekend brought a barrage of messages. Voicemails from my mother alternating between crying and anger. Texts from my father accusing me of selfishness and ingratitude. A long email from Jeffrey explaining in detail how I had ruined everything and why I was a terrible person. I deleted them all. Sunday night, Teresa called. So I heard through the grapevine that you finally told your family off. Please tell me the rumors are true. How did you hear? I asked. My cousin was at that bistro. She said it was the most dramatic thing she had seen outside of reality television. She sent me a text saying, "Your friend Barbara just destroyed her family at brunch." Great, I muttered. That is not mortifying at all. Are you kidding? It is amazing. I have been waiting years for you to stand up to those people. What happened? I told her everything. The trip, the expectation, the words at the table. When I finished, Teresa was silent for a long moment. "I am proud of you," she finally said. "That took guts." "It took anger," I corrected. "I am not sure it was the right thing." "Barbara, they literally called you useless to your face at a public restaurant. What else were you supposed to do? They are my family, so what? Family does not get a free pass to be abusive." And yes, before you argue, that was abuse. Emotional abuse. You know it was. I did know. I had known for years, but had convinced myself it was just their way, just how they showed love. But love did not look like this. Love did not measure worth in dollar signs. "What if I am wrong?" I asked. "What if I am being selfish?" "Then be selfish," Teresa said firmly. "You have spent 28 years putting them first. Maybe it is time to put yourself first for once." We talked for another hour. By the time we hung up, I felt steadier. Monday at work brought a surprise visitor. Jennifer showed up during my afternoon break looking uncomfortable in the hospital waiting area. "Can we talk?" she asked. We went to the cafeteria. She bought coffee for both of us, which felt like a peace offering. "I wanted to apologize," she said, "for what happened at the bistro. That got ugly." It did, I agreed. "For what it is worth, I think you were right about most of it." Anyway, I raised my eyebrows. "Most of it?" She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I have been with Jeffrey for 2 years. In that time, I have heard probably 100 comments about you. How you wasted your potential, how you chose wrong, how you will never amount to much. And honestly, I just went along with it because I did not know you well enough to question the narrative. And now I realize I am engaged to someone who thinks success is the only measure of worth, who treats his sister like garbage because she makes less money than he does, who genuinely believes some people are just better than others. That is who you are marrying," I pointed out. "I know," she sighed. "I am not sure what to do with that information yet, but I wanted you to know that what they said to you was wrong. Objectively wrong, and I should have said something at the time." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. "That actually helps." "The trip got canceled, by the way," she added. "Not scaled back, canceled entirely. Your parents do not have the $12,000. They assumed you would pay, so they did not save it themselves. Jeffrey offered to cover it, but your father refused. Pride, I think, or stubbornness. Maybe both. I absorbed this. They had been so certain I would cave that they had not even prepared a backup plan." "How is Jeffrey handling it?" I asked. "Badly. He thinks you owe them an apology. He is talking about cutting you out of family events unless you apologize and pay for a replacement trip." "Of course he is." Jennifer stood to leave, then paused. "Can I ask you something? Why did you become a nurse?" The question caught me off guard. Because I wanted to help people. Because when I was 16, my best friend's little sister died of leukemia. And the nurses at the hospital were the only people who made that nightmare bearable. I wanted to be that for someone else. "That is a good reason," Jennifer said softly. "Better than Jeffrey's reason for real estate, which is basically just money." After she left, I sat alone with my coffee and thought about that conversation. It was the first time anyone in my family's orbit had suggested I might have made the right choice. That night, my mother called. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but answered instead. "Hello, Mother. Your father and I have discussed this situation," she said, her voice formal and cold. "We have decided to give you a chance to make this right." How generous. Do not be sarcastic. This is serious. If you apologize and transfer the money by Friday, we will forgive this entire incident and move forward. If not, we will have no choice but to reevaluate our relationship with you. Reevaluate how. You will not be invited to family events. You will not be included in holidays. You will essentially be on your own until you learn to value family properly. I closed my eyes. This was the ultimatum I had known was coming. The final power play. So, my options are to give you $12,000 and accept being treated terribly, or refuse and lose my family entirely. Your options are to honor your family or choose selfishness. Those are the options you created with your behavior. My behavior, I repeated. Not Jeffrey's behavior when he called me replaceable. Not father's behavior when he called me a disappointment. not your behavior when you asked me to fund your vacation while having given me a fraction of the support you gave Jeffrey. My behavior? We raised you for 18 years. You did the bare minimum required by law. That does not entitle you to my life savings. Then I guess we have nothing more to say to each other. She said, "Goodbye, Barbara. When you grow up and realize what you have thrown away, do not expect us to be waiting." She hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment and waited to feel devastated. Instead, I felt lighter, as if a weight I had been carrying for 28 years had finally been lifted. My phone buzzed. A text from Jeffrey. "Hope you are happy. You destroyed Mom. She has been crying for hours. All because you are too cheap to help your own family. You are dead to me." I blocked his number. Then I blocked my parents' numbers too. It was Wednesday, October 11th, the day I became an orphan by choice. October became November. The leaves in Portland turned brilliant shades of red and gold before falling to carpet the sidewalks. I worked my shifts, went home to my quiet apartment, and slowly learned what it felt like to exist without the constant weight of disappointing someone. Teresa invited me to Thanksgiving with her family. They were loud and chaotic and fought about politics over dinner, but underneath it all was genuine affection. Her mother asked about my work and actually listened to the answers. Her father told terrible jokes that made everyone groan but laugh anyway. "This is what family is supposed to be like," Teresa whispered to me while we did dishes. "Messy, but loving." "I am not sure I know how to do that," I admitted. "You will learn." December arrived, and with it came the dates when my family would have been in Hawaii. December 15th through the 30th, I worked Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, taking shifts so my coworkers with young children could be home. One of the mothers brought me cookies. Another family gave me a card signed by their daughter, age 8, who drew a picture of me as a superhero. I hung the picture in my locker at work. On December 22nd, I received an unexpected email. The subject line read, "Family Emergency." I almost deleted it without reading, assuming it was another manipulation, but something made me open it. It was from my Uncle Robert, my father's brother. I had not spoken to him in years. He lived in Seattle and rarely came to family gatherings. "Barbara," the email read, "I heard about what happened with your parents and Jeffrey. Your mother called me crying about how you ruined their vacation. I asked her to explain, and let me just say I am on your side. What they asked of you was unreasonable and unfair. I have watched them treat you as less than for years, and I am sorry I never said anything. If you ever need anything, call me. You deserve better than how they have treated you." I stared at the screen for a long time before responding with a simple thank you. His reply came within minutes. "Mean it, stay strong." It was the validation I had not known I needed. Someone from my family, someone who had witnessed the dynamics, was saying I was not crazy. I was not wrong. I was not the problem. January brought a new year, and with it, unexpected peace. I started therapy using some of the money I had saved by not funding the Hawaii trip. My therapist helped me understand that what I had experienced was not just casual favoritism, but a pattern of emotional neglect and gaslighting. "Your family created a narrative where Jeffrey could do no wrong, and you could do no right," she explained. "And they reinforced that narrative so consistently that you internalized it. You started believing you were less than." "I'm a nurse," I said. "I save lives." Why was that not enough? Because they measured worth by income and status, not by contribution. And in that value system, you would always lose. The system was rigged from the start. Understanding this did not erase the pain, but it helped. It helped me see that I had not failed them. They had failed me. February brought another surprise. Jennifer called, her voice shaky. "I ended the engagement," she said without preamble. "I called it off." "What happened?" I was planning the wedding, and every time I mentioned wanting my sister as a bridesmaid, Jeffrey complained that she was overweight and would look bad in photos. Then he suggested my parents pay for the entire wedding, because his parents already supported him so much over the years. Then he got angry when I pointed out that you were right, that his family treated him like gold while treating you like garbage. "I am sorry," I said, and meant it. "Don't be. You did me a favor. You showed me who he really is before I legally tied myself to him forever. So thank you." We talked for a while longer. She was moving back to her hometown in California, taking a new job with better pay, starting over. "Maybe we could get coffee sometime when I visit Portland," she suggested. "If that is not too weird." "It is not weird," I said. "I would like that." Marge brought spring blossoms and a letter, an actual physical letter postmarked from Vancouver. It was from my mother. I debated throwing it away unopened, but curiosity won. Inside was 3 pages of handwriting, my mother's familiar script. "Barbara," it began, "I have done a lot of thinking over these past months. Your Uncle Robert said some things that made me examine our relationship with you differently. I see now that we may have been unfair in how we treated you compared to Jeffrey. I am not saying you were right to refuse us, but I understand better why you reacted as you did." The letter went on. It was not quite an apology, more an acknowledgement. She explained that she and my father had been raised to value ambition and achievement, and they had projected those values onto their children, without considering that success could look different for different people. Your father says he is proud of you. She wrote near the end, "He will not say it to your face yet, but he told me last week that he mentioned you to his golf friends. He told them his daughter is a nurse who saves children's lives. He said it with pride, Barbara, real pride." The letter ended with an invitation, nothing extravagant, just Sunday brunch at the bistro. No expectations, no demands, just a chance to talk if you are willing. I set the letter aside and thought for 3 days. On the 4th day, I called my mother. "I will come to brunch," I said, "but I have conditions." "Anything," she said eagerly. No more comparisons to Jeffrey. No more comments about my salary or my choices. No more expectations that I will fund your lifestyle. I am your daughter, not your retirement plan. Can you agree to that?" There was a long pause. "Yes," she finally said, "we can agree to that. And one more thing, you need to actually apologize, not justify or explain. Apologize." Another pause. Longer this time. "You are right. I am sorry, Barbara. I am sorry for how we treated you. I am sorry for making you feel less than. I am sorry for not seeing your value. It was not perfect, but it was a start." April brought the brunch. My parents were subdued, almost nervous. Jeffrey was not there, which my mother explained was his choice. "He is still angry," she said. "Give him time." "Or don't," I said. "I am okay either way." We talked carefully like strangers learning to be friends. My father asked about work, and when I told him about a successful surgery I had assisted with, he listened, really listened. "That sounds difficult," he said. "You must be very good at what you do." It was not the sweeping apology I might have wanted, but it was acknowledgement. It was a beginning. May arrived with unseasonable warmth, and with it came the real reckoning. Not the public confrontation at the bistro or the months of silence, but something quieter and more devastating for my parents. My Uncle Robert called me on a Tuesday evening. "Barbara, I need to tell you something, and you are not going to like it." "What happened?" "Your parents are in financial trouble." "Serious trouble." I sat down hard on my couch. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where they have been living beyond their means for years, and it is finally catching up with them. That Hawaii trip, they could not afford it. Even with your contribution, they had planned to put half on credit cards. But father has his pension. Mother has her investments." Had Robert corrected gently. "She had investments. They cashed most of them out 2 years ago to help Jeffrey with his condo purchase. And your father's pension is solid, but they have been spending like he makes twice what he actually does." The pieces clicked into place. The designer handbags, the golf clubs, the expensive dinners, the constant displays of wealth and status. "They are broke," I said flatly. "Getting there. They have maybe 6 months before they have to make some serious changes. Sell the house. Probably move somewhere cheaper. Does Jeffrey know? If he does, he has not offered to help, which is rich considering how much they have given him over the years." After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness and processed this. My parents had been days away from financial disaster while demanding I fund their luxury vacation. They had called me useless while drowning in debt from supporting my brother's lifestyle. The irony was breathtaking. June brought confirmation. My mother called, her voice thin with stress. "Barbara, I need to talk to you about something." "I heard," I said. "Uncle Robert told me." She made a small sound, almost a whimper. "We did not want you to know. It is embarrassing." "What did you think would happen?" I asked, not unkindly. "You gave Jeffrey over $100,000. You spent money you did not have trying to look successful. Did you think it would just work out somehow?" "We thought Jeffrey would help us," she admitted. "When the time came, we invested in his future and we thought he would take care of us later." "And has he?" Silence. "Mother, has Jeffrey offered to help?" "He says he has his own expenses now. He has to rebuild his savings after the engagement ended. He says, we need to learn to manage our money better." The exact words they had said to me when I'd asked for $5,000 for nursing school. I see. I said, Barbara, I am not calling to ask for money. I just wanted you to know we are selling the house. We found a small condo in Vancouver that we can afford. We will be fine, will you? We will adjust. We always do. She sounded so defeated, so small. The mother who had always been larger than life, always perfectly dressed and perfectly confident, reduced to this. I should have felt triumphant. This was karma, justice, proof that I had been right all along. Instead, I just felt sad. Do you need help with the move? I asked. No, thank you. But no, we made this mess. We will clean it up. July brought the move. I did not help respecting their wishes, but I sent a card with a gift certificate to a local restaurant. Nothing extravagant. Just enough for a nice dinner in their new place. My mother called when she received it. You did not have to do this. I know. After everything we put you through. Mother, I said gently, I am not doing this to be superior or to prove a point. I am doing it because you are my parents, and I love you even when you hurt me. She cried, then really cried. I am so sorry, Barbara, for all of it. For making you feel worthless when you were doing something so valuable. For prioritizing Jeffrey for everything. I know. I said, I forgive you, and I meant it. The anger had burned out months ago, leaving behind only understanding. They had been raised in a value system that measured worth by income and status, and they had never questioned it. They had genuinely believed they were helping Jeffrey more because he deserved it more. They had been wrong, but they had not been malicious, just misguided. We are proud of you. My mother said, your father and I. We should have said it years ago, but we are proud of who you are and what you do. Thank you, I said. And this time, the words landed differently. This time, they felt real. August brought a surprise visit. Jeffrey showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning, looking uncomfortable in jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual suit. Can I come in? He asked. I let him in, made coffee, and waited. Jennifer told me what she said to you. He finally said about calling off the engagement, about what I said about her sister. Okay, I have been into you for years, decades, really. Yes, you have. He flinched but nodded. I thought I was better than you because I made more money. I genuinely believed that. And then I watched Mom and Dad lose almost everything because they live the same way, believing appearance mattered more than reality. And I realized I am just like them. Are you apologizing? I asked. I am trying to. I am not good at this. No, you are not. He almost smiled. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not even know if we can be siblings again. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did wrong. Do you see what they did wrong too? I asked. Or is this just about your guilt? He thought about that. Both, maybe. They failed you, Barbara. They failed you, and I benefited from it. And I never questioned it. No, you didn't. We sat in silence for a while drinking coffee. For what it is worth, he finally said, I am trying to be better. I started therapy. I am examining why I value the things I value. It is uncomfortable. Growth usually is. He left soon after. We did not hug or promise to rebuild our relationship, but it was a start. Maybe September brought cooler weather and a new rhythm to my life. My parents settled into their condo in Vancouver, learning to live within their means. Jeffrey apparently continued therapy, though I heard this secondhand from Uncle Robert rather than directly. I did not track their lives closely anymore. I had my own life to live. Teresa and I took a weekend trip to the coast, staying in a cheap motel and eating fish and chips on the beach. We talked about everything and nothing, the way friends do. You know what I have noticed about you? She said as we watched the sunset. You smile more now. Real smiles, not the fake ones you used to do around your family. Do I? Yeah. You seem lighter, like you finally put down something heavy you had been carrying. She was right. The weight of trying to earn my family's approval, of constantly measuring myself against an impossible standard, was gone. In its place was something simpler: peace. October marked 1 year since the bistro confrontation. I thought about marking the anniversary somehow, but it seemed unnecessary. The day had already changed everything. It did not need a celebration. Instead, I worked a double shift. A toddler came in with a severe asthma attack, and I spent 6 hours helping her breathe easier monitoring her vitals, talking softly to her terrified parents. When she finally stabilized and fell asleep, her mother took my hand. "You are an angel," she whispered. "I do not know how to thank you." "Just take care of her," I said. "That is all the thanks I need." This was what I had chosen. Not the money, not the status, not the luxury vacations. This moment, this child breathing, this mother's relief. I would not trade it for anything. November brought Thanksgiving again, this time at my parents' small condo. Jeffrey came too, bringing a surprisingly humble casserole and a quieter demeanor. "The place looks nice," I said, meaning it. The condo was small but cozy, decorated simply but with care. "We are learning to appreciate what we have," my father said. "Turns out we do not need as much as we thought." Dinner was simple. No expensive wine, no elaborate dishes, just roasted chicken and vegetables and pumpkin pie from the grocery store bakery. And it was the best Thanksgiving I could remember. We talked about normal things. My father asked about my work, and I told him about a successful surgery on a child with a heart defect. My mother asked if I was dating anyone, and I said no, but that I was content anyway. Jeffrey talked about his therapy and admitted he was considering a career change. "To what?" I asked. "I do not know yet. Something that feels more meaningful. Real estate makes money, but it does not make a difference, you know." I did know. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside. "I wanted to show you something," she said, leading me to a small bookshelf in the corner of the living room. There, prominently displayed, was a framed photo of me in my scrubs holding a newborn in the NICU. I did not even remember when it had been taken. "Your father and I put that up the day we moved in," she said. "We wanted to remember what really matters. Not money or status or appearances, just the people we love and the good they do in the world." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you." "No, thank you for not giving up on us even when we gave you every reason to. For being the better person. For showing us what strength really looks like." December brought a holiday party at the hospital. The nurses and doctors exchanged modest gifts and shared stories about the year's most memorable cases. Someone brought homemade cookies. Someone else brought hot cider. Trevor's family stopped by with a card and a gift certificate for me. He was doing great. His mother reported back in school and healthy. "You saved his life," she said. "We will never forget that." I thought about my family's question from a year ago. How does it feel being the useless child? I knew the answer now. It felt like holding a child who was breathing because of my care. It felt like a mother's gratitude. It felt like making a difference in the world, one shift at a time. It felt like purpose. That night, I drove home through the decorated streets of Portland, past houses lit with holiday lights and families visible through windows. I thought about the year that had passed, about everything that had changed. I had lost the version of my family I had always wanted, the one that valued me equally, that saw my worth, that celebrated my choices. But I had gained something more important. I had gained myself. My sense of worth was no longer dependent on their approval. My value was not measured by their standards. I was enough exactly as I was. January brought a new year, and with it a message from Jeffrey. I am taking a job with a nonprofit. He texted helping low-income families find affordable housing. The pay is terrible, but it feels right. Thought you should know? Maybe we could get coffee sometime. I responded. I would like that, and I meant it. February brought coffee with Jeffrey. We met at a small cafe near the hospital, and for the first time in our lives, we talked as equals. He asked about my work with genuine interest. I asked about his new job. We did not discuss the past or offer elaborate apologies. We simply started fresh. I am learning what you already knew, he said, that there are more important things than money. It took losing everything for them to see it, I said, and almost losing everything for you. Better late than never, right? Maybe, I said. We will see. March brought spring again, and with it, a full circle moment. My parents invited me to brunch, at the same bistro where everything had exploded a year and a half earlier. I almost said no. The memories of that place were still sharp, still painful. But then I thought about how much had changed since that day. How much I had changed. So, I said yes. We met on a Sunday morning, the three of us. Jeffrey was working and sent his regrets. The bistro was as lovely as I remembered, sunlight streaming through the windows and sparkling on the river. My parents looked different, older certainly, but also softer somehow. The hard edges of their former lives had worn away, leaving something more genuine behind. "Thank you for coming," my mother said. "I know this place holds difficult memories." "It does," I agreed. "But maybe it is time to make new ones." We ordered simply. No expensive wines, no elaborate entree, just omelets and coffee and fruit. "We wanted to tell you something," my father said, looking nervous. "Your mother and I have been volunteering at the Children's Hospital in Vancouver in the playroom. We read to the kids, help with activities, that sort of thing." I stared at him. "Really?" "We wanted to understand your world better," my mother explained, "to see what you see every day. And Barbara, it is remarkable. Those children, the way they fight, the way they hope despite everything, the way the nurses care for them with such dedication. We finally get it." My father said, "What you do, why it matters, why you chose it." Something inside my chest unlocked. This was what I had needed all along. Not their money or their approval, but their understanding, their recognition that my choice had value. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means everything. We are the ones who should be thanking you," my mother said, "for not giving up on us, for showing us what really matters, for being exactly who you are, regardless of what we thought you should be." We talked through brunch, really talked. They told me about the children they had met at the hospital. I told them about my cases, and they listened with genuine interest. When the check came, my father insisted on paying. "It is the least we can do," he said, "after everything." As we left the bistro, my mother hugged me tightly. "I love you," she said. I should have said it more. I should have shown it better. But I love you, Barbara. Exactly as you are. "I love you too," I said, and meant it. April brought an unexpected call from Jennifer. She was back in Portland for a work conference and wanted to meet up. We had dinner at a casual restaurant, the kind of place I could actually afford. She looked different too, lighter somehow, unburdened. I got promoted, she told me. Director of marketing, good salary, better benefits, and I actually enjoy the work. "That is wonderful." I said, "I owe you for it. You know, if you had not stood up to your family, if I had not seen what real strength looks like, I would have married Jeffrey and spent my life trying to fit into that toxic value system. You would have figured it out eventually, maybe, but you accelerated the process. You showed me that walking away from something toxic is not weakness, it is survival." We talked late into the night, sharing stories and dreams and plans. By the time we parted, I had a real friend, not just my brother's ex-fiancé. May brought the 1-year anniversary of my parents' move. They invited me to see how they had settled in. The condo was modest but comfortable, filled with books and photos and evidence of a simpler life. "We are happier now," my father admitted. "Turns out we were miserable when we were trying to keep up appearances. All that stress, all that spending, just to impress people we did not even like. And now," I asked, "now we live within our means. We volunteer, we spend time together. We appreciate what we have instead of always wanting more." It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get for the years of comparison and criticism, but it was enough. As summer arrived, I reflected on everything that had changed since that fateful brunch 18 months earlier. I had walked into that bistro as someone desperately seeking approval, willing to sacrifice my own well-being for people who did not value me. I had walked out as someone who finally understood her own worth. The months that followed had been difficult, painful even, but they had also been necessary. Sometimes the only way to build something healthy is to burn down what is toxic first. My parents would never be perfect. They still occasionally made thoughtless comments or showed favoritism toward Jeffrey's accomplishments. But they were trying, genuinely trying to do better, and that effort mattered. Jeffrey was on his own journey, learning to value contribution over compensation. We were not close, but we were civil, sometimes even friendly. It was more than I had hoped for. As for me, I was exactly where I needed to be. Working in a career I loved, making a genuine difference in children's lives, living within my means, but richly in the ways that mattered. I had $13,000 in my savings account again, rebuilding toward that down payment. But I was in no rush. I had learned that security did not come from owning property or having a certain amount of money. It came from knowing your own value, from being confident in your choices, from building a life that aligned with your true self. The months after that confrontation had taught me something else, too. Revenge was not about making others suffer. Real revenge, the kind that actually healed, was about refusing to let their judgment define you. My parents had called me useless. They had implied I was a disappointment, a failure, a waste of potential. But every child I helped heal proved them wrong. Every grateful parent, every successful treatment, every moment of comfort I provided during crisis. These were my true measures of success. I did not need their validation anymore. I had my own. In the weeks that followed that confrontation, my parents discovered the hard truth about the values they had spent decades worshiping. Their obsession with wealth and status had left them financially devastated and emotionally bankrupt. They lost their home, their comfortable lifestyle, and the future they had assumed Jeffrey would secure for them. My brother, the golden child they had invested everything in, refused to help when they needed him most. Citing his own financial priorities with the exact words they had once used on me, they were forced to sell their belongings, downsize to a modest condo, and face the shame of admitting their mistakes to family and friends who had watched their grandiose lifestyle for years. The irony was not lost on anyone. The daughter they had called useless was the only one who showed them genuine compassion during their downfall, while the son they had elevated abandoned them entirely. They learned painfully and slowly that the worth they had assigned to people based on income and prestige was hollow, and that the daughter they had dismissed possessed the kind of character that actually mattered. Looking back, I realized that the moment I canceled that transfer was not just about refusing to fund a vacation. It was about reclaiming my life, my worth, my future. The revenge I had taken was not cruel or vindictive. It was simply the act of valuing myself as much as I valued others, of drawing boundaries where there had been none, of choosing my own well-being over their comfort. And in doing so, I had not destroyed my family. I had saved myself and eventually given them the chance to save themselves too.